Melinda, thank you. Let's finish Erlima Owen's story. And you're having an interaction with police in October in Queens, New York. You're trying to help them get a fellow who's like out of control, a young man, into the car. Things are fine. You're working with police cooperation. Then it does a flip. What happens?
As I said, I had turned my back to the police officer to walk up into my driveway, and quite by surprise, I was put in a chokehold. I was drugged 25 to 30 feet of my property line. I was, when backup came, I was thrown down on the ground, stopped unconscious, put into a patrol car.
Good Lord.
And, oh, yeah. Oh, it's a lot more than that. All of this is very brief to what actually happened. And in expressing to them that I have children and asking what had happened for it to go this far, basic things like, I know I can't use all these words, but get in the car, F your kids, they're going to learn to be without you. And I was every kind of ungodly woman that any woman could ever be.
Why? But why did this happen?
My theory, I'm not saying that this is necessarily what they said happened in their minds, but in my mind, looking back at the situation, it was a situation where they could not control a situation, and a woman from a black community had controlled a situation for them with the community looking on. And
so you had a lot of witnesses, what do you think?
Oh, yes, indeedy. Yes, indeedy. My community comes out.
Let's get Jared in.
I'd like to see before he does.
Okay.
Before he does. And in seeing that that the control was given by someone other than a man in blue, they decided to make the community recognize that they still wear blue and that they have the control. So I think that's where the beating came from.
And what was, they charged you with?
Oh, they charged me with disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, assault in the second and third degree, harassment, and something else. I had like
let's get Jared. What's your reaction to this?
Well, it sounds like they did a crazy, utterly unjustified, brutal thing. I don't know if that's exactly what happened.
That sort of thing happens every day in America. And when you have that happening over and over again, you have to come up with some explanation. Either the tooth fairy is doing this, or there is something called racism. And what you are doing is you are refusing to admit that racism, as the Kerner Commission observed 30 years ago, still exists in America. What happened to this woman has happened to me. What happened to this woman is probably a story that every last black male in that audience could tell. If she was unique, if she was novel, then this would not be worth discussing. But what that gentleman is doing is denying that what this woman has just told you is truth, and what this woman has just told you is a reoccurring part of American history.
And he just said it was a brutal thing. I mean, he didn't.
But you understand, we don't care about this one woman's story. If this only happened to her, what difference does it make? It would not be worth taking the time. But what she has just said could be echoed by every last black member in your audience. That is racism. It's not simply a brutal story.
It's funny because the precinct that this happened to me through, if I said all that correct, not only started with me, because they're the precinct for the stun gun. Okay, if anybody's familiar with that situation, they know right away what precinct it is. And then after that, I don't know if anybody, I won't call the young lady's name, but her father turned out to be a police commissioner, and all heavens broke out. You know, and not after, 7 months after me, the same precinct came around and harassed 2 boys from Atlanta and beat them in their own yard for whistling at a dog.
Let's get Jared. Is justice the same for black and white Americans?
Well, I'm sure that there are occasional incidents of the kind that she's described.
All of it. Wait a second. Now, the audience is skeptical of you. When we discovered Mark Fuhrman in the O.J. Simpson murder trial, did you think Mark Fuhrman was an aberration?
I don't think he's typical of white police, no.
Okay, folks, what do you...
Why? Wait a minute. Let me ask the question.
Okay, why?
How do you know that Mark Fuhrman is not typical of police?
I don't know. I said I don't think that he is, because...
But wait, hold on a second. Let's say he were not necessarily typical, but let's say there were a lot of Mark Fuhrmans on police forces around the country. Would that concern you where black Americans are concerned?
Sure it would. Sure it would. If police are making unprovoked attacks on law-abiding black people, that is a terrible problem. And I don't think anyone would pretend that that's not a problem.
Okay, then if that exists, the question is that an example that racism is not just a fantasy in our heads, but a fact in the street?
I don't think anyone would claim that there's no racism in America. I think that there are actually probably more black people who hate white people than there are white people who hate black people.
All right, black people who hate white people. Any black people here who hate white people? So you're saying, excuse me, do you hate white people? I'm looking for, no, you have a comment? Hold on, let me get up there to you. Wait a second, we have a lot of black folks in this audience. They don't seem to hate white folks. That's good to hear.
I have a comment in regards to, is justice equal for blacks and white in America? It's not equal. In the early days or historically, as we reflect on justice, the justice system, we had Jim Crow laws that were in effect. We moved from the Jim Crow laws and came into the civil rights movement. Affirmative action has been taken from us. We have two separate economies. The economy that you have as a relation to the economy of the black community is two separate economies. We don't live like you live. We don't. Wait, let me ask you something in all of that. I understand what you're saying, but is there any role that the black community plays in what you're saying? Because you're saying they took affirmative action. What I'm saying to you is that a lot of the afflictions that we have upon us, we ain't asked for. And if it seems as if we are blaming or pointing a finger in the direction of Caucasian males or white America, it's the truth. It ain't the babies. It ain't your babies. It's your fathers. It's your founding fathers. Not your children. Okay, so now that we've said that, as you believe that it's their fathers and their responsibility, so where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? We go to a separate economy. We go to self-reliance? Self-reliance and coming together collectively as seen in the Million Man March, and we move towards doing something for self. Thank you. Jason from Tennessee, we have a phone call. Jason, what's your question or comment? Thanks for your call.
Yes, I have a couple comments I'd like to make about a couple things.
Sure. Go ahead, Jason.
I saw on the Montel Williams show a couple days ago, or it's been a little while, about the Simpson trial. He said that if Simpson was truly tried by his peers, that the jury would have been all African Americans, and statements like that make people mad and upset against everybody. If he was tried by his peers, he should have been a representative of all races. We just need to make the effort all to get along.
Yeah, good point, Jason. Thank you very much. What about, no, it sounds naive. You know, who said Who just went Wait a second. Now, what is wrong with a comment like we should make an effort to get along? Stand up here. Tell me why you went What's your name?
My name is Carl.
Okay.
We should make an effort to get along because in order to survive this country, we all should get together to understand each other. And
let me ask you something, and this whole thing about understanding, and I'm just going to move on here. Thank you for your question. Is there a fear among white Americans, maybe white American males, of black Americans, particularly black? Let Jared answer here. Is there a fear, and if it is, what is it, Jared? Oh,
it's a fear of violence. Blacks are per capita 10 times more violent than whites. Oh, wait. And, hold on.
Hold on, we have a statistic on this. Hold on. Melinda.
If she has access to the database of the Statistic on Criminal Justice Handbooks put out by the FBI, she will get that information. But per capita, blacks commit as much more crime than whites, as men commit more crime than women.
Well, let's get to Melinda here. You have the
wait a minute,
hold on, Ed. Let me get to Melinda. You can make a point in a second. Melinda, give me a statistic.
First of all, let's just look at Baltimore, which is a typical city of the United States. Blacks were disproportionately represented as far as going to prison. In a city that is 60% African Americans, blacks accounted for 90% of homicide victims and 96% of homicide suspects. Now, according to the FBI annual report on crime, most crimes, including 80% of violent crimes, are committed by persons of the same race as their victims. So that's something we always talk about, black on black crime, well, there's also white on white crime.
Let Ed hang on. We have to take a break. When we come back, you're going to hear from a black activist who says the only answer to racism is to separate the races. We'll find out why he feels that way, folks. Stay with us. We'll hear what Ed Lawson has to say. Jared and Erlima, stay with us.